Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. Here at Forbidden Knowledge News, I've always taken an unbiased, open-minded, and responsible approach to presenting my own theories, and the views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. Conspiracies are definitely fun to discuss in a responsible way. My suggestion to everyone that has an audience and presents theories and possibilities should present them as such, and in no way present unsubstantiated information as truth. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Castaldo. First, a couple of announcements. Check out Brainsupreme, which contains the highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey. Check out their website, brainsupreme.co/discount/FKN15. You'll get 15% off the order. You can also use the link right in the description. Watch the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana. That is on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. By watching, it helps us finish producing our upcoming film, Doors of Perception. Also, get a Rokfin premium membership, rokfin.com/FKN+, and always be sure to download our audio podcast directly through Spreaker. We are booking for December. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Castaldo. He is a born intuitive, call-bearer, musician, artist, and all-around Renaissance man. From a lineage with deep ancestral history going back hundreds of years in the Mediterranean that's connected to preserving the stellar mysteries. Ra, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Chris? Thank you for having me back on Forbidden Knowledge News. It's a pleasure to be here,
It's a
brother.
pleasure to have you back. I really enjoyed our conversation last time. You've been researching various ancient suppressed, misinterpreted, and lost texts for a long time. And today you're going to be presenting your research into the Solar Prophecy 2025, as well as ancient Solar King Bloodlines. This is something that I'm really not very familiar with, so I'm looking forward to learning something new today. But before we get into any of this, remind the audience a little bit about yourself and how they can find your content.
Cool. I think you're going to find out that the topic we're talking about today ties into much of what probably you've been researching and talking about in the past. You haven't
It usually
fully
does,
connected the
man.
whole
Everything
dots.
seems to be connected in
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the intro and everything. You guys have heard in the prior intro probably a little bit about my history. And if you're new to who I am, I basically I come from a hereditary background in the Mediterranean area that has to do with a lot of religion and spirituality. Some of it blended with Catholicism over time, but it's like a form of mysticism where you're in connection with the nature and the universe and the flow of everything, right? Well, my specific bloodline were called the Tanara, sometimes called the Janara, where they preserved the oral traditions which helped connect humanity and the collective consciousness to the stellar mysteries. And what I mean by stellar mysteries is that ultimately we are made of stars and we are connected deep to the climate of weather of space, if you want to say,
Mhm.
right? The cosmic weather. And ultimately, the way we evolve and what we feel is a reflection of our own vibration and what's in turn being reflected and uh, coming down in the form of light from us and from the sun and from other stars, right? So my bloodline was about in the past, certain people were born a certain way that had certain abilities to travel in dream time and to sense certain things about people where they could help cleanse the collective consciousness of people and their communities. And some people called them witches, some people called them mystics, some people called them shaman, some people call, some of them went to work for the Catholic Church and other church and other organizations. But a lot of the people that were born gifted in this way were born the way I was born, still inside the call. Now, the call is spelled Caul, Caul, right? So the call is the amniotic sac. So my mother's water never broke. When I was born, I still came out in the sac, the full sac, which is the call. I could share pictures if we in a little bit if you want to see it. So those born this way, sometimes people are born just with it on their head and face, like a veil.
Mhm.
Some people are enveloped still in the whole call, like I was. Actually, my birth was called a and call birth with nuchal cord birth. Not only was I born still inside the call, but I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, which is the nuchal cord, right? So, um, many people that are born inside the call, they experience a hypersensitivity to some of the unseen energies that are around us at all times, whether they come in uh, frequencies or electricities or all sorts of energies that we have around us. Those that are born in the call seem to experience a hypersensitivity to it all, and especially um, more intense dream time, lucid dreaming, things like this where it's really intense, and you sort of you pick up on vibrations um, uh, hypersensitively, and especially things that might be transpiring in the magnetic field around the planet and things like that. And I didn't even realize that until later on in life. But those born in the call have been seeked out in all cultures and some become medicine men, shamans, some become spiritualists. You could go to Puerto Rico, to Africa, South America, anywhere on earth. There's lore about those born in the call. Some call them call bearers. Sometimes it's called a mermaid birth or being born behind the veil. But there's a lot of people experience, seeing spirits, ancestors, all sorts of things, people born in the call. High percentage of people will be considered what we call psychic if that are born in the call, and maybe don't even realize it until they get older. That what's going on is a form of hypersensitivity to what's going on around us that a lot of people are closed off to nowadays, right? We have a lot of caked on stuff too. Our ego makes it even
Yeah.
worse. So, in my Italian tradition, there's people that are born this way that are considered either the benindante or the malandante, because usually you get polarized towards one side or the other as you get older. You're either going to use these abilities as a blessing or a curse,
Mhm.
right? So, and there's certain energies that are aware of you at a very young age, and it becomes very hard. So, like when I was a kid, if I was like really spiritually charged up and energetic, like I was a hyperactive kid, and I come from a pretty traditional, old school Italian family. So if my mom was like 9:30, you got to go to bed, I had to go to bed, right? And go in your room and just shut out the lights and try to lay down and go to sleep was a hard thing for me when I was a kid like that. And sometimes when I'd be forced to go in the room and I'm laying in the darkness and I was just like doing backflips off the couch and going crazy right before that, where I was all energetically charged up, I would go in my room and lay down and lay in the dark, and sometimes little faces would come at me. Different things would come at me. I would hear whispers and my name sometimes, things like that. Scary. It was very, very frightening thing for a kid to witness and experience. And when they don't truly understand it, and as you start to learn more things and interact with more people, you realize that hey, uh, other people aren't experiencing some of this. Like, am I crazy? Am I having mental problems and things like that? So, um, it's really good that I learned about some of the past of my family and the traditions in my family, and that those were born, certain people were born like this, going back hundreds and hundreds of years, all the way back to one of my ancestors, Giordano Bruno, who is within my tradition and bloodline. He was one of the ones that were born in the call. And I'm actually part of Our Lady and Lord of the Trinacrian Rose. It's like a hereditary bloodline. Actually, there's other people that are within the group. It's sort of like a religious and spiritual group, right? They're tax exempt in Massachusetts, and Lori Bruno runs it. She's in her 80s, and they made me like a reverend, I guess you could call it a reverend. I have like the certificate and everything. I don't like practice or call myself a reverend, but I've been a Reiki healer for like 30 years and been helping work with people. So they sort of gave me this you know, uh, like what's it called? Not just a certificate, but like
Honorary.
a reward, an
Yeah,
honorary
yeah.
reward, sort of, you know? Yeah. So I wasn't asking for it or anything like that. But I can like do marriages for people in Massachusetts,
Right on.
and I live in New York State. I'm not sure if I could do it in New
Yeah.
York though. Um, but yeah, I mean, Giordano Bruno was one of the people that were preserving the stellar mysteries and was able to pull in knowledge about the universe. And he was crucified, basically. I mean, he was burned at the stake in 1600 for saying that there were innumerable suns in the universe, that there were planets around these suns with probably life on them, and that Earth was not unique. You know, that it's not the center of everything, that there's no one center in the universe, it's infinite,
Mhm.
right? And he got burned at the stake for
Right.
that.
Give us an overview of the solar prophecy. Where should we start with this research?
Well, I previously mentioned how space weather and the climate of space is very important, right? And we've had so many instances in the past where Earth has changed drastically. And I do believe it's from solar events from the sun,
Hmm.
right? And there's proof of this that we can get into as well. It's changed the whole formation of the land on Earth, the structure of the Earth, CO2 levels at specific times, volcanism, triggered volcanism on the planet many times. And the sun is a living, breathing being. You can look at the sun as an angel, right? Every sun and star is a messenger of the universe, a messenger of God. It's a living, breathing being, right? And it's very, very intelligent that you can't even fathom the kind of intelligence a sun or star is. It's creating, sustaining, evolving, and destroying life, and ultimately then ejecting all of its knowledge afterwards into a nova or supernova event, and then afterwards it evolves beyond that light, right? It's just like we go through a
Hmm.
progression, right? And the universe is a very intricate place where we are being evolved from our own vibration, right? And because of our own actions, the sun absorbs our emissions, our actions, and it channels in energies to us and evolves us accordingly. Everything is interlinked like that, right? So we've had past civilizations on this planet that were super advanced than we were, right? There's proof of that all over our ancient writings, and it's embedded in our DNA. We feel it, we know it, right? We know it. We know it's our ancient past. We know it's our ancient ancestors. That's why our body responds and we feel certain things so intently. And like we're all looking for answers because we know we've lost something in the past. And we know our ancient ancestors were more in tune with nature and the universe and the sun, right? Ultimately, all these bloodlines, whether you're talking about like Anunnaki or all these different names that come up, they're all solar dynasties and solar kings, right? They're all stellar kings and solar kings. When you talk about the shepherd kings, the fisher kings, all these different names all have to do with being a solar king, right? And we're going to get into this symbolism. When you're talking about a shepherd, people got to realize where that knowledge comes from and the symbolism used. Now, whether you're talking about ancient Egyptian or the ancient Vedics, it all comes from Aryan ancient Sanskrit originally, right? They all derived from that. And just like the Vedas, ancient Egyptian has a solar waters reference, right? Where you're on celestial waters and you're traveling on some sort of solar barge or solar boat or solar references, right? This is all have to do with the plasma waters coming from the sun. And all of these solar references all have to do with bloodlines being in connection with the streams of light, the streams of plasma that are coming, that they are channeling and harnessing, right? So when you have certain shepherds that they're using that symbol, you got to understand they use symbolisms to represent the sun in very interesting ways. One way that they represent the sun is by a cow or a bull, right? Another way, the cow is the female essence of the sun, and the bull is the male essence of the sun, right? So when you have a shepherd that's tending to his stock of cows or bulls or sheep or whatever, when he's tending to his cattle, he's tending to the rays of light of the sun. When you have cow references or cattle references in these ancient writings, the cows and cattle represents the rays of light. So if you have the shepherd tending to his cattle, he's literally tending to the rays of light of the sun. And when you see him with his crooked shepherd staff, that has to do with the coronal mass ejection loops and the solar flares, literally retrieving the light from the sun, right? It's a golden noose, the golden crooked staff of the gods, right? So this is a very intense symbolism when you have a shepherd kings, any of this cow symbolism, like with Indra, right? When Vitra's stealing the cattle of Indra, he's stealing the light, stealing the rays of light from the sun, right? And this is very, very important because they have this all over the references and people misunderstand even those simple things. So when you have cow references, when you have even like the golden wolf references, these are all solar references, right? There's all different references that have to do with the sun, right? The white horse references, right? Like the sun technically is white. We see it yellow, but it's a white horse, right? So all of these symbolisms all have to do with solar knowledge, plasma physics, but it's the spiritual significance of it all as well, right? Because what's happening with the sun affects us energetically and spiritually. And like I said before, our vibration is what's being absorbed by the sun and the stars. And we're being evolved according to our own vibration. And since at least 3000 BC on this planet, we've had the Asura energy, the Asura current vibration. What I mean by that is it's a greedy, materialistic, drug addicted, only flashy and glamorous worship. That sort of power and dominance and greedy, materialistic vibe has been sprayed upon our planet in the light because we're being calling out for that. The vibration of the planet is calling out for that. And when it's starting to mess up the whole solar system and ultimately the universe is affected by this. So when this starts to happen on the planet, it's even talked about biblically. The sun needs to restart things on this planet. And it brings a solar force in the form of solar lightning and solar blasts that bring cataclysmic events on this
So
planet.
this is interesting.
Right.
What you're saying is basically our energy, what we're perpetuating here in this material realm, gets sent out. And if we are desiring materialism to be anti-human and all the dark things that humanity has brought upon itself, that whatever we're perpetuating will come back to us as if that's something that we fundamentally desire as humans.
Yeah, whether it's beneficial or not, that's the climate of the collective consciousness.
And this would be basically
right?
why we're in the situation that we've been in for centuries.
100%. 100%. And this is why solar storms that are sent here, they can be the information that's being sent from the sun can be beneficial for us or it can annihilate us. Right. And it's talked about in very interesting ways in past writings as well. You literally have some of the stories from ancient Egypt. One of them is called the destruction of humanity, right? The destruction of mankind, right? And this is when literally the climate on Earth is how they put it is they're talking bad against Ra, that they're going out of balance with the sun. They're going out of balance with nature and the universe, right? Literally. So Ra decides to hire or summon Hathor in the form of Sekhet, which is basically described as a solar lioness roaring force coming from the sky with red wings and the solar blast, right? That's coming to annihilate Earth. And at nighttime is when it subsides. And they mistranslate and act like they gave that it was an earthly thing where they had to give her like a jug of
Huh.
beer. But all the stuff they talk about is they're talking about auroras and cosmic waters and how the nighttime it gets absorbed into the magnetotail and she sleeps. She stretches out on the nighttime on the night side, right? So that's when the storm subsided, was when the night came and when it stretched out into the magnetotail, right? But they describe a solar force coming down. And we can see this in some of the oldest writings that we have, like the Rig Veda. So let me read you this. And this is describing, in my opinion, a coronal mass ejection, a noose, a wheel coming off of the sun, a solar force coming down and eliminating life on the planet as we know it and destroying the evil on Earth. And it's talked about in the Rig Veda. It's talking about how when Indra releases the flood to destroy the Dasyus. Now, the Dasyus are these evil, fallen Aryan people. And to your listeners, I think I need to first clear up the word Aryan. Because when people hear the word Aryan, unfortunately, they think like pure white brotherhood or something like that. Aryans weren't just white, they were the most diverse culture on the planet. They were a worldwide culture
Mm.
and a lot of them originated in India. Now there was a war between these Asura and Deva clans, right? They were priests and warriors. But back then they were these adepts, they weren't just priests or warriors. To be an Asura or Deva, you had to be a warrior and a doctor. You had to be a shaman and a scientist. You understand? It was all merged together. Spirituality and science were not different. They were fused, entwined together. They weren't kept in two opposite ends of the spectrum. So these ancient Asura Deva clans, these are what you can call in Hebrew the Nephilim, right? This is what you can call the Anunnaki. These are what all these names derive from. You had like five main Vedic families, like the Anus. This is where you get like Anunnaki from. You had like the Purus. You had the Yadus. You have there's five of them, and they made up the Kshatriyas, which are the Asuras, the warriors, and the Brahmin, which are the Devas. All right, so these priest warrior clans, they went to war over the spotted cows, which literally is the rays of light coming from sunspots. That's how incredible that they're describing that, right? So with the knowledge that they were harnessing and pulling in from the sun, some of them wanted to use this power and energy to rule as gods. Some of them wanted to stay in harmony with nature and the universe. Some of them wanted to share the knowledge. Some of them just wanted to keep it for themselves. There was all conflicts amongst these Asura Deva clans, and they split up and it brought catastrophe. Some of them were fallen ones and were using their ritualistic mantras for cannibalistic sex magic and all of this stuff going on, right? The Battle of the Ten Kings was the first recorded battle that we have in ancient writings, right? With King Sudas. And this was ritualistic mantra warfare, right? Spiritual warfare that they were using. And this is what brought these Dasyus, which can be considered some of these ancient tribes that were giants and Nephilim and all of
Mm.
that, right? So in the Rig Veda, they talk about how Indra brought a solar force to bring these Dasyus down, right? So in Rig Veda 4:26:1 says, I gave the earth. Now this is English translated from Sanskrit. Uh, I gave the earth to the Aryans, the rain to the mortal worshipper. I led the roaring floods. The gods moved according to my will. In ecstasy, I destroyed the 99 cities of Shambhara. Then it says, united with you and in your friendship, O Soma. Indra made the floods to flow for man. He destroyed the serpent who held the seven rivers. He opened out their covered channels. United with you, O Soma, he broke off the wheel of the sun suddenly with force. As it revolved through the great mountain, the great evil was removed from all life. Now he's talking about a wheel breaking off of the sun. I mean, that's exactly what happened with coronal mass ejections. They're twisting magnetic field lines that form these loops and wheels and ankhs, and they break off of the sun and bring solar forces down, right? And this is talked about in all prophecies. I mean, I can right now and blow your mind right with this. And you guys are gonna freak out when you hear this. You hear everybody talking about the blue star Kachina prophecy from the Hopi, right? So I did a meditation on this, a solar meditation on this, and I was shown that it is a blazar that's going to be headed our way. Now, what's interesting about this, a blazar is very similar to a quasar. You know what a quasar is? It's
Yeah.
like a supermassive
Mm-hmm.
burst, a jet stream coming from a supermassive black hole. Now, a blazar is similar to that, but a blazar is when it's pointed at that jet stream is pointed at its observer, hence Earth, right? So when that happens, there's a when a star jet stream is moving away from us, it has a red color frequency in the cosmos. When something is moving towards us, it shifts from red to blue,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when it shifts from red to blue, it goes from invisible to visible. It's a blue star that's headed right for us, right? So when something's headed towards us in the cosmos, it's a blue shift in frequency color. When it's moving away, it's red. Now in the blue star Kachina, they're talking about how it's he's going to remove.
Yeah.
This is the Book of the Hopi by Frank Waters. It has the blue star Kachina
Mm-hmm.
prophecy in it. I'll read it right to you. It talks about like he's gonna remove his the blue star Kachina is gonna remove his mask in the plaza
Mm-hmm.
and make himself visible to the uninitiated children, and it's gonna come and bring the World War III and destruction on the planet, right? So when they're talking about a blue star Kachina removing his mask, so here it is. The end of all Hopi ceremonialism will come when a Kachina removes his mask during a dance in the plaza before the uninitiated children. Now, when something removes his mask, he's going from being invisible to
Mm-hmm.
visible, right? And it's a blue star Kachina. So that's, that's a blazar headed our way, bro. I'm telling you. And it says, for a while, there will be no more ceremonies, no more faith. Then Oriabi will be rejuvenated within its faith and ceremonies, making the start of a new cycle of Hopi life. World War III will be started by those people who first received the light, the divine wisdom, right, or intelligence from the stars, right? This is the light that they're talking about. And they're talking about the older countries like India and China, Egypt, Palestine, Africa. They were the ones that first received the light,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the United States, they say, will be destroyed, land and people, by some sort of radioactivity or atomic bombs. And I think it's solar. It's going to be a solar event, like a blue star Kachina, cosmic radiation, right? Only the Hopis and their homeland will be preserved as an oasis to which refugees will flee. Bomb shelters are a fallacy. It is only materialistic people who seek to make shelters. This is what it says in their prophecy. Those who are at peace in their hearts already are in the great shelter of life. There is no shelter for evil. Those who take no part in the making of world division by ideology are ready to resume life in another world. Be they of black, white, red, or yellow race, they are all one, brothers. The war will be a spiritual conflict with material matters.
Mm-hmm.
Material matters will be destroyed by spiritual beings who will remain to create one world and one nation under one power, that of the Creator. That time is not far off. It will come when the Sa-Kwa Sohu, or Blue Star Kachina, removes his mask and dances in the plaza. He represents a blue star, far off and yet invisible, who will make its appearance soon. This is a blazar, my friend. It's a blazar that's going to be headed our way, right? And the time is also foretold by a song sung during the Wu Wu Chim ceremony. and it was sung in 1914, just before World War One, and again in 1940, before World War Two, describing the disunity, corruption, and hatred contaminating Hopi
Mm.
rituals, which were followed by the same evils spreading all over the world. This same song was sung in 1961 during the Wu Chim ceremony. Now, the emergence to the future fifth world has begun. It is being made by the humble people of little nations, tribes, and racial minorities. You can read this in the earth itself. Plant forms from previous worlds are beginning to spring up as seeds. This could start a new study of botany if people were wise enough to read them. The same kind of seeds are being planted in the skies and stars. The same kinds of seeds are being planted in our hearts. All these are the same, depending on how you look at them. This is what makes the emergence to the next fifth world. These complete the nine most important prophecies of the Hopis, blah blah blah. All right, so there were eight other prophecies. That was the Blue Star Kachina one that I read. And you guys can get this in the Book of the Hopi by Frank Waters. I have older copies too. This is like my third copy. My older copies, like the pages fell out of them.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, this destruction of evil on the planet is talked about in all cultures, not just the
Right.
Hopi. And the Hopi, they were part of the solar. They were remnants of ancient Atlantis, ancient Vedic cultures,
Mm.
right? And part of their DNA came from somewhere else. It's not from here, right? And they had knowledge of prior solar events, and they went underground previously in other times.
Let's get a little deeper into who the Solar Kings were. Is this in any way connected to the Sumerian kings lists,
Oh, hell
the
yeah.
ancient deities and powerful leaders and beings that were depicted in the Sumerian text?
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that for sure. But first, uh, I lost my train of thought for a second. What I was going to finish what we were talking about previously. Um, oh, what I didn't get into about the
Mm.
2025 solar prophecy is that there's a lot of people throughout the years that have been getting messages from the sun in their own ways, right? And the sun is intelligent. It'll bring something to your psyche, and it'll bring something according to your own beliefs, your own your own you know your own spiritually ingrained feelings, your culture. It'll bring something to you in a very interesting way sometimes and give you a message, right? Give you a warning of the calamities that's coming towards us, the chastisements that will come down on us if we continue our ways. And many people have been shown this in different ways. And I've been getting prophecies even my throughout my whole life about certain things. I've seen even my best friend's death 17 years before it happened. I saw it in a dream, and it woke me up, and I thought it was going to happen the next
Mm.
day, and it ended up happening 17 years later. So we all get visions and certain things, and the sun communicates to the people that it can reach with its rays, right? And those that are in tune with the sun in various ways over the years, they've gotten symbols. Like Alice Bailey is from Theosophy, and in the 1930s and 40s, she talked about how in the year 2025, a celestial hierarchy will be returning,
Mm.
right? And she talked about the solar logos. And I do feel that we're going to be coming to a solar event, and possibly in July of 25, because we're in a grand solar maximum right now, where solar storms are just increasing with incredible speed. We can't predict how it's ramping up and accelerating so much. And I think it's going to be event like and that could trigger
Mm-hmm.
volcanism across the planet and an ice
Mm.
age. And some people thought we were heading towards an ice age in like 2050. I actually think it's coming a lot sooner. And in 2025, we could have a solar event, a solar lightning impact crater event that could eh, split apart land and bring volcanism and change the CO2 levels and blanket the sky, right? And change a lot of things on the planet. And I think that's what we're headed towards. And these solar kings, they've witnessed these bloodlines, this happening in the past before. and certain cultures emerged out of this in the past. We had at one time the Pangea, right, continent where it was all connected together. And most likely it was a solar event, an impact event, a solar lightning, a thunderbolt of Indra that split that mega continent, right, and split it across. I have pictures if we can go into it as well. But there's it's probably what formed the Deccan traps in India, a big, huge, massive basalt event that they end up making all the temples out of this basalt after, right? All these temples in these areas. So yeah, these solar kings, they've been throughout all the bloodlines, and they had war over the planet, over dominance, and it's continuing still to this day. The Asura bloodlines are still controlling us to this day. They're the ones that keep you drug addicted and controlled and
So
materialistic.
this is the
And
breakaway civilization from the more enlightened kings. This is the ones that are more
yeah,
materialistic and dark.
these are the
Okay.
Asuras. Yeah, the Devas and the Asuras were united all at
Mm-hmm.
once. At the beginning of the Rig Veda, they're united. But then they go to war, literally over the rays of light, over the
Mm-hmm.
cows, right? Which is the rays of light of the sun. They wanted to extend the light, harness the light to achieve immortality, right? To rule gods, to be suns and stars themselves, eternal stars, right? And some of this might be achieving this in certain places in the cosmos. There's certain stars in the center of galaxies that are becoming immortal. Literally. It's literally at the center of the galaxy, the S cluster of stars, and they're immortal stars. You can look it up. So it's possibly that these Nephilim solar kings are evolving after death into stars, into suns, right? So this was their goal. This was their goal to become like the gods, to become a god or a sun or a star themselves, become a shining one, right? This is where this is what Asura and Deva means. It means Almighty One and Shining One, right? They're the bright ones. They're the shining ones. They're the stars and suns. Ultimately, the word Asura means like that. So let me break that word down to you. So in Sanskrit, the word as means to sit or to become or to sit on your throne and vibrate in heavenly glory, right? It's literally and when you have the Osiris, his symbol is sitting on his throne, right? Like that. Well, Osiris's name is Asar. It's not Osiris. Osiris was the Greek term for him. His true name is Asar. He was the Asur or Kim, the one that sits on his throne and becomes like a star, like a
Mm-hmm.
sun, right? So that word is where you get Assyrian from, the Asura, right? This is where you get Ahura Mazda of the Persians, right? It's just a sound shift.
It seems like in our
It's a
modern age,
sound.
instead of trying to achieve this state through natural abilities, that our ruling class is trying to achieve this through technology.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're using a replication of what we should be
Mm.
interfaced with. So we should be using natural elements to harness the rays of light for the sun to be in tune with the flow of nature and the universe and evolve with it. Instead, like we're supposed to be using natural elements, megalithic sites, all of that natural elements and natural stone and the elements of the planet to build structures so we can harness those energetic locations and be in tune with it. Instead, we build machines to do that for us, to stand in the place for us so we can sit back and enjoy things and not have to do the spiritual work to be in tune with the environment and nature. Right. So now we've built these structures to stand in the place of what we're supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
doing, and it's taking over and building on a life of itself. Hold on, let me just plug this
Yeah.
laptop in. All right, so it's become a replication. Like I always use the 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 comparison of like instead of being telepathic with the collective consciousness of humanity, we're using instant
Yeah. Yeah.
messaging and text messaging, right? It's a substitute of what we should be faced with. But yeah, all these dynasties after this worldwide catastrophe, like the biblical flood, and there's solar kings, solar priests right in the Bible, right? They're just looked at as the prophets of God. Like you have, for instance, Elijah, right? Elijah, he has this famous standoff with the priest of Baal where he has to light the altar of Yahweh on fire, and he summons down fire from the sky, from the heavens, to light the altar of Yahweh. Now, of course, the priest of Baal cannot do it, but he does it just by uttering a certain word, just by uttering a certain word, right? So this is the solar logos, if you want to say, right? This is the mantra, the being in tune with the it's most likely was a form of Sanskrit. Sanskrit's called the language of the gods for a reason. These mantras, the sound of Sanskrit is the primal sounds of nature and the universe, right? When you're using the Om, this is the heartbeat of the sun. The Aum, Aum, this is the beat of the sun, right? This is the heartbeat of the solar system. So every sound and vowel and syllable in Sanskrit comes off the cosmic drum of Shiva. It comes off of the primal sounds of the universe. It's called the language of the gods for a reason like that, right? So when you're using a certain sounds, he was able to probably understand that there was a solar storm and that it was arriving at a certain time, and he was even to channel in that light. He probably actually, when he challenged the priest of Baal, he probably knew a solar storm was arriving, because you have about 2 days before a solar storm arrives when it's headed towards Earth after it breaks off of the sun, right? So there was probably an ancient way of channeling in that stream of fire coming from the heavens. And he was able to consume the altar of Yahweh with the spiritual light of the sun, right? Even Elijah, later on, they try to bring armies against him, and he disintegrates them, turns them into ash on the battlefield from the fire that he channels from the heavens. And then afterwards, he doesn't even die. He's like Enoch. God just took him in a way. He disappears in a chariot of fire, Elijah, right? And with Enoch, they say just walks with God, like he never died. God took him to walk with him. And a lot of people think Enoch and Elijah are the two that are going to return in the end times in the Revelation. But yeah, Elijah, and there's also like Amos in the Bible. He was another solar priest, another solar king. And Amos has the same thing. I think it's the 13th book of the Old Testament is the book of Amos. And he's bringing down fire from the sky. And it even says this fire has iron teeth, which is very interesting because solar storms do have iron in them. And the iron lines up with the magnetic field like teeth. They line up, like iron shavings line up with the magnets. So the iron in the solar storm literally lines up like teeth. So they describe that right in the book of Amos in the Bible.
Now let's talk a little bit about what we're experiencing now. You called it the Solar Prophecy 2025, and there are a lot of interesting things happening. We recently witnessed a massive solar storm that we could actually view from the south, and the turmoil overall that we're experiencing on this planet, it seems that we are being presented these possibilities, and it's up to us whether we align with darkness or light at this time. And my question is, do you think it is possible at all for this prophecy to be avoided based on, as you said before, what the collective is putting out there?
Yeah, I think it's very important that we change the vibration of humanity, the collective consciousness of humanity. I know it sounds almost impossible, but we need an event like that to take place, maybe to bring people and wake people and shake people up. It just seems like it's accelerating, and yeah, I mean, it's very important for us to stay hydrated, stay well rested, stay mentally healthy during these energetic storms, because the climate of the sun is going to be affecting the climate on the planet, right? The spiritual domain of humanity is very similar to um, the rays of light of the sun. It's very intricate and very hard to understand, very enigmatic, right? Understanding plasma and everything that's coming from the suns and stars is really just as hard as understanding the spiritual domain of humans, right? So people got to understand who they are and be comfortable with their sexuality themselves, uh everything about them, to first be able to help themselves. You have to be first, you got to chisel through that ego, right? And there's so much ego around everybody that it's very hard for them just to experience the energies around us, let alone be able to be in tune with the space weather, right? The weather of space that's coming. And we're getting messages all around us, bro, that we're coming to an event. And I was shown in a vision that it was going to be like some beam from the sky that came down and brought a complete darkness on the planet, which sounds very similar. I literally saw, and this was, it was incredible, bro. I woke up in a sweat during this dream. It was like a lucid dream, like a psychic dream, one of those dreams that when it wakes you up out of it, it's so intense,
Mm.
right? And you retain like a little bit of it right before you woke up. And we were all stranded on a bus, almost like Jeepers Creepers movie, you
Yeah.
know, when they're all
Yeah.
stranded on the bus, right? So we were all stranded on the bus, but it was just complete darkness all around us. Like you couldn't see anything outside the bus. Then all of a sudden, this like bolt of like greenish beam came out of the sky. And because it was so bright, it flashed and lit up everything around the bus for a split second. And as it lit up everything around the bus, I saw these big, huge, like feline looking giants. They were like winged and feline-ish faces, and they were huge. And they were holding these big spheres, and they were harnessing that light that was coming down with these, like in these spheres, like they were around it. And then some people were just like turning to ash around the bus, and other people were moving up in the air. It was weird. It was like a split second. We saw it around. Now, I don't know what this is telling me, if it's a solar event, but the darkness sounded very similar to the 3 Days of Darkness prophecy of Anna Maria Taiji. She's a Catholic mystic that lived, I think she was in the 1600s, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, maybe it was the 1800s. I forget her birth date now. But she was another one, dude. She was someone who, she called it her miniature sun that which she would see. This little, what she describes as like a torus, a spinning torus that had a bright orb inside of it that she called her little sun, her mysterious sun. And this sun would show her visions of the future.
Mm.
And she was like a normal housewife, but she came from, I think, a Etruscan lineage, and she had some special, you know, maybe like hypersensitivity to things as well. But I truly think her, see, I've read autobiographies about her. She came from abusive relationship, and back then you kind of had to, you couldn't get divorced. You kind of had to just serve your husband and deal with it, right? And he kind of was like a real bastard to her, and wasn't like beating her up a lot, but mental abuse was just a real
Mhm.
bastard. And she had to pretend it was like a really perfect marriage into the church and to the community, and she was stuffing all that spiritual energy
Mm.
inside. And when you stuff trauma inside like that, sometimes your brain can't handle it, and it opens up some things to compensate,
Right.
right? And it changes the chemistry of your brain. And now pre neurons that were previously sleeping are now awake. DNA that was previously inactive are now awake,
CIA knows all about
right?
this with MK Ultra. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Mm.
why they do that. You know, and then they'll even come rescue you, like, hey, I helped you, like, you know, I'm your friend, I'm rescuing you from the trauma, right? And then yeah, that it's really crazy how yeah, it's exactly why they do that, because when, whether you're going through a high ecstasy moment or a high traumatic moment, your brain sometimes cannot handle the the stress of the situation. It maxes you out, where your brain just, things that were previously inactive that you didn't need, or you now need it. Your brain has to, you know, and things just start happening. And sometimes you can come out of that with abilities and things that you didn't have
Mm,
before. And sometimes it might take you decades to figure it out,
yeah.
right? And I'm definitely know what I'm talking with that from her firsthand experience. So,
An observation that I've made and many others recently, at least over the past decade or so, is that the sky has changed from what I remember it as a kid. I remember the sun being more of an orange yellow warm color and the sky was a deeper darker blue. Now there seems to be this white haze over everything, which I'm sure the chemicals and the pollution and chemtrails that they're shooting out into the sky has something to do with that. But it seems like the sun's color has fundamentally changed to this white, bright LED light bulb color. Is this something you've noticed as well?
well, the sun is white. We just see it yellow through the spectrum, right? But it is white. That is the color. Maybe because of the sun goes through different cycles, right? And it goes through different times of different
Mm.
sunspots, and sometimes it has little sunspots, and sometimes it has a lot of sunspots. So maybe it's because we go through certain cycles with the sun that it seems to shift, and it seems to, and we do tend to switch magnetic poles every once in a while as
I
well.
just know that everyone that I
So
talk to who grew up in the 70s and 80s seems to have a consensus that they saw the sun as a different
yeah,
color back then.
it does seem that way, but I mean, I did as well. I'll be 47
Mm.
coming up, so I was born in 78,
Yeah.
so I grew up those same times. Um,
But it could
yeah,
represent, like you were saying, the sun is changing and the energy that is coming out of the sun is changing as well. And maybe we're seeing
oh,
that.
for sure, we're going through cycles, and we're not taught the truth about the sun, right? I mentioned on your last show, I think that even in school they don't even tell you it's a plasma sphere, right? They tell you it's a hydrogen gas sphere,
Mm.
right? So they don't tell you the spiritual side of the space as well, right? And basically, the space is not mostly empty like people think. It's 99.99% of the mass of the universe is plasma. It's interconnecting everything. It's the Akashic
Mm.
records. It's a living, breathing, interconnected network of sentient matter, right? It's a higher state of matter than we are. If you have solids, liquids, gases, and you have plasma, right? So when you superheat a gas, it turns into plasma, right? It becomes its own sentient. Now the electrons are now free and it's like moving and sentient and moving around. And there's structures that even form in the plasma to accelerate the sound of the light. You see it during supernova explosions, and you see it in all symbolism all over. Now, check this out. I could share screen. I'll show you what
Mm.
I mean. So you'll see it in different um, supernova explosions. You'll see it in all sorts of different symbolism in hieroglyphics, and it's like that bell
Mm-hmm.
structure or light cone structure that you see. This is a typical structure that you see in all symbolism, and you'll see it throughout the cosmos in many different ways. Let me pull up the picture first before I share screen. All right, so you have right here the Crab Nebula
Mm.
pulsar and the Vela pulsar. Two very similar supernova pulsar bursts. And you can see there's that conical bell structure that
Yeah.
forms with the burst, the jet stream in the middle. Now this light cone is what I call accelerating the sound of the light. It forms these bell-like structures to move and channel and stream the jet stream of light, of plasma, of information, right? And you see even the stupas in Vedic made out of this shape, right? Even we have the bells are made out of this shape, right? Stupas are made out of this shape, and you'll see this shape used in all sorts of symbolism representing the gods or suns, right? So you see right here one of the staff of the Egyptian gods, and you have these bell like, flower like, bulbous like that they depict as lotus flowers
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, or other flowers like that. This is the structures that form within the plasma to accelerate the sound of the light. And you see when they have these different symbolisms here, you have the coronal loop here, coronal mass ejection loop. These are these cone-like structures that come out of all sides of the coronal blast. And then you always see the feather of Mott on the top there. That feather of Mott is right here. That feather of Mott. Mott is translated as like the harmonic balance, things like that. Well, it's an ostrich feather that they have. Now, what does an ostrich feather do for the ostrich? It regulates the temperature of the ostrich and how much light it receives from the sun, right? So that's all symbolism. Just like when you see like the hawk or the eagle, things like that. Those are the birds that can stare and fly towards the sun and look towards the sun more than any other animal on the planet, right? There's specific symbolisms that's used in these ancient writings, and you'll see these conical structures, these bell-like structures, they form just in when you're doing the lens flares. You'll
Yeah.
see these structures form. Now, this is at a dolmen site, right? And you can see, look at these bell-like structures coming
Mm-hmm.
down. Same thing. They're accelerating the light. They form all over, and you'll see in stupas these bell-like structures that they replicate, right? Because it's channeling the sound, the
Mm-hmm.
frequency, the sound of the light, the solar light, right? And these bell-like structures form are shown everywhere, right? So like even when you have, you know, this is from the later 18th dynasty, and talk about solar dynasties and solar kings. So Akhenaten's line intermarried with Mitanni's from the North Syrian, right? North Syria, Mitanni, they were almost speaking pure Sanskrit. They were an Asura tribe that emerged in North Syria after the flood, most likely from first it came out of India and then traveled and eventually ended up in North Syria. Now, they intermarried with Mitanni princesses. Akhenaten's father did, and Amenhotep III, and Amenhotep III's father, Thutmose IV, married Mitanni princesses as well. Now you can see these conical structures that are shown all throughout here as well. People think these are just flower stands here. No, these are conical structures for a reason. And these radiant flowers, they are not flowers. This is radiant matter, right? This is light from this cosmos. These are all solar symbolism. Look, this is showing you arms of light coming from the
Mm-hmm.
sky and bringing it to the flowers, right? This is all solar
Mm.
symbolism, right? You have literally the arms of the sun handing down coronal
Right.
loops, these little Ankh loops, right? They come from the sunspots. And then you have the hooded cobra. That golden cobra is the coronal loop. The hooded cobra, right? And he's always in the
Mm-hmm.
sun, right? All of that is and then the snakes travel through the plasma waves. It's called Birkeland
Yeah.
currents or solar emission. These are the Naga, right? They are the Birkeland currents, right? And this or the solar asp or
Mm-hmm.
uraeus or basilisk in Greek, right? This is it moves the way the electricity moves through the plasma waves is like snakes, even like dolphins stand diving, like the dolphins of
Mm-hmm.
Apollo, that they even show Apollo having these dolphins on these leashes. It's literally showing you he's whole as the information. It's the leashes are the magnetic field lines. He's holding these dolphins. They're diving through the waters. They're literally called the messengers of the sun. The Apollo is the sun. The dolphins are the messengers of the sun, the messengers of Apollo, and they dive through the cosmic waters the way the information dives through the waters traveling from the
Mm-hmm.
sun.
Right
All
on.
right, it's all solar symbolism, bro. It's
Yeah, it
incredible.
is. Now we got a few minutes left. What would you like to close out with to kind of wrap everything up with this conversation?
We're heading towards a solar event that can change our planet forever, maybe possibly even losing our individuality and humanity as we know it. This is coming to a point. We're at the final battle of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
bro, right? It's very important. that you explore your creativity and your free will through your creativity and get in touch with nature and the light of the sun, right? You got to speak to the light. You got to channel the light, and you got to let the light know that your vibration is for the good of the collective consciousness of the planet, not just yourself.
It seems like our perspective, our imagination, and our intention is the fuel that really forms our reality. And it's not only that, since we're all connected, since our consciousness is all connected, the more people align with a positive outlook and a better perspective, the more it forms this powerful information field that really perpetuates itself, right?
For sure, bro. For sure. And like I said earlier, in my opinion, the interconnecting network of solar wind that we have coming from all stars and suns is the Akashic records. Right? And we all are absorbing the light on an angle, right from the sun, right from the stars. We're walking antennas. The sun's light is connected to the spinal current of humanity. We're walking antennas, right? So it's very important that we get rid of all the sludge that's around us, dude. We are caked in sludge. It's around our whole planet. Our whole dimension has sludge around it. Cosmic sludge. Cosmic fallout. Right? That's basically what even the word Nephilim means. It means like a cosmic abortion. A cosmic throwdown from heaven to earth. Aborted cosmic sludge.
Well, this is a very special time. It's pretty obvious. Ra, thank you so much for this information. Before you go, remind everyone how they can find all your content.
Everybody, you can find me pretty much at a Mystical Spiral across the board. The mysticalspiralstore.com if you want my copper energy devices that I make and world-class, ethically hand-sourced gemstones and crystals. I also make gemstone and copper energy devices, twisted copper tensor tools. Everything from harmonizers to pendants to everything. So you guys can get that at the mysticalspiralstore.com. If you want my groundbreaking research, you can go to patreon.com/themysticalspiral. I have my Space Water podcast on exploring the Ka on YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, man. Love it. We'll definitely do this
Thanks,
again
brother.
in the future. And until next time, everyone,
No doubt.
have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.
And spiral out.
Yes. You can now stream the Forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Fossum Free Movies and TV, which is available on Fire Stick, Roku, iOS, and Android. Look for it soon on Tubi as well. We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history.